Okay, so welcome to the next part of my Android development crash course. Now we're going to start tackling some of the errors that we still have, and the compilation errors, so stuff around navigation, constraint, layout, etc. Okay, so now let's have a look at getting rid of some of the errors in activity main.xml, which is your layout file for your main activity. So I've added some things around navigation, and yeah, those are in red, the errors there cannot resolve, and that's just because we haven't created those yet. If we go inside res layout, we're now going to want to create a new layout resource file, and we're going to name it nav header. Okay. Alright, I'm just going to populate it with some, okay, so what I'm checking in here is something that I've used in one of my other projects. So I'm just putting in a constraint layout, and there's a bunch of red stuff in here now. That's because I haven't created this drawable yet. I haven't defined these dimensions and that sort of thing. So let's do that in a moment. Okay, so the next thing to do is we're going to look at getting rid of these dimension related issues. So for example, the padding and the margin ends and all that. It's a good idea to not hard code these things in here and to rather specify them in a separate XML file, a dimensions file. And I'm going to show you how to do that now. So one way you could do it is you could just hover over one of these things and hold in Alt and press enter, and then create dim value resource spacing normal. You could go that route and create the new file and then add these things one at a time. I'm going to just show you how to create the file directly and then pop in my values that I've used in another project. So if we go inside of res, you'll see a directory called values. We're going to create a new values resource file called dimens, short for dimensions. Okay, and that will automatically become an XML file. So you can see here it is, dimens.xml, and I'm going to pop in values for nav spacing normal, and spacing small, which if we go back to navheader.xml were these ones that I was using here. Okay, and you can see the errors have disappeared, so it's now accessing them from the dimensions file. The next thing to then do is something similar for the strings. So there's already a strings.xml, so we'll just add in the navigation header there. So again, it's best to specify these things in separate XML files. It also opens you up to possibilities for things like internationalization and what have you. Okay, so here we are inside of strings.xml. Sorry, I was in styles.xml. We actually want to be in strings.xml, and we're just going to add a new string resource for navigation header, and I'm just going to make the value navigation header, so that's what will actually show up. And then if we have a look back at navheader.xml, we'll see that that error has also disappeared. So the last one to resolve is this one around the source compat. So this is actually the source of this image view. So this drawable is the actual image to show, and I'm going to just take one from one of my other projects just to show you. It's just like one that I've found in an Android course somewhere, just to get it in there. Okay, so inside of res there's a drawable directory. We're going to add our new drawable resource file there, call it nav header, nav_header. Okay, don't worry about the root element. I'm going to just replace this with what I had there. So now this is actually a vector graphics image basically, so it's specified all the different vector paths. So these things you can create with various other applications and generate these files. That's a bit of a separate topic, but for now I'm just going to use this one that I've taken from elsewhere. And if we now have a look at the nav header, so now we know how to add a drawable. That is actually, the error has gone away. So this has given us the ability to have an image on our nav header. And if we go back to activity main XML, we can now see that this header layout thing is no longer red. So we've got rid of another navigation related issue. So getting rid of this navigation error over here, where we specified the nav graph, that this navigation thing that it's referring to, it actually needs to be another resource file, and it's basically what defines all the different actions and sort of paths, navigation paths within your the new application. So we're going to, inside of res, we're going to specify a new directory called navigation, and we are inside of that going to create a navigation resource file also called navigation. Right. Now I'll show you this at a later stage, how you actually go about adding this through the GUI, adding different navigation pieces. It's very cool, but for now I am just going to leave it as is, just what's been generated here for us, just to get rid of the errors, but the navigation still needs to be specified. So now if we go back to our activity main.xml, we've at least got rid of that error by just adding that empty navigation XML file. We'll need to create some fragments and things to navigate between, so we'll do that in a bit. The last navigation related error that we have in activity main XML is this one around the nav draw menu. So that's going to actually refer to the XML file that defines which menu items the user can see and click on for the nav draw menu. For now, we're just going to create an empty XML file to get rid of the error. I'll show you where to create it. Inside of res, we're going to first create a new Android resource directory. We're going to call it menu. So just so you know, this, whatever we're calling this directory, like menu, and we've done it in other places with layout and whatnot, that must match this piece here where it says add menu. So that's the name of the folder, basically, menu. Then inside of that, create an XML file which matches that part. So nav draw underscore menu. Okay, menu resource file nav draw underscore menu. And again, there's a graphical interface for setting these up, which we'll look at later. And in the text, there's just a empty menu element right now, empty menu tag. If we go back to activity main.xml, you can now see that that error has also disappeared. And the last error for us to get rid of from main activity.xml is just around this missing drawable. So we've already seen how to do this, how to create drawables just inside res drawable. You create a new drawable resource file. In this case, it's called logo. And I've just taken some vector graphics image, the set of parts again like I did the previous time, and I'm just going to paste those in there for now. And then what we see is that we now have a tick over here, which means we've got no more errors. Now this is complete, only a typo, which I'll just ignore for now. And yeah, so that's a big step forward. We now have less errors. Let's build and see if we have any errors left at all. I'm going to just start running the build, and I'll pause the video while it builds. Okay, so we can see we still have a bunch of errors coming through. So we're not just there yet. All these linking errors and whatnot. So that's what we'll look at resolving next. See, we also have another issue here. So let's address this quickly. To use vector drawable compat, you need to set android.default.config.vector.drawables.user support library to true. So we can actually just click Alt Enter, and you could suppress it, but let's rather deal with this warning. Okay, so since we want to use the vector drawables, let's go and enable it properly. Build.gradle, inside app, we go in there. Inside of our default config block, we're going to add the following: vector drawables.user support library true. And then we're going to sync this. Okay, now that syncing is done, let's go back to activity main XML, and we see that the little red underline there has now disappeared. So rather than suppressing it, which is never the best solution, we actually dealt with it correctly. So the next thing that we see now, once we've built, is we're still getting errors, and it says error attribute layout, etc., all constraint layout related things. If we click on this, you see it's taking us to this image view inside of our constraint layout, and it's complaining about these various constraints that are specified. Okay, so that's a sure sign that we haven't included the dependency for constraint layout. It's actually got a separate dependency. So let's go ahead and do that now inside of our build.gradle, sorry, wrong build.gradle, the one inside of app we want to go to. Okay, and let's include this over here. Alright, before I sync it, I've used a placeholder for the version, so let's go and add that. So to do that, I'm going to go inside my other build.gradle file, inside of the root, and just where I've got all my other version properties defined, I'm going to define one for constraint layout. So 113 is the version I'm using at the moment, and I'm going to sync that. Okay, and there it's synced it up. Now if we rebuild the project, let's see what happens. Okay, so now that the build's complete, we no longer have those constraint layout related errors. We have some other errors which we'll address shortly, but at least we have constraint layout included correctly. So if we now click on the error that we have, we'll see that it talks about a dependency that contains Java 8 bytecode, and it tells you that you need to include this stuff. So you just go inside of your build.gradle inside of app. I'm just going to add it here under the build types section. I'll add a new section called compile options, and I'll specify the source and the target compatibility to 1.8, and then we resync. Okay, and then it reruns the build. Okay, so let's just rebuild again, and now we can see, let's give it a moment. So now we can see that the build has passed and we finally have no errors. So we can now actually look at the next step, which is running this thing and seeing, well, what does it do so far. So thanks again for watching this next part of my crash course, and please continue to watch it. We now have compiling code and we'll start working through some runtime errors, and shortly we'll have a running application. And please subscribe to my channel.